Ashley's back again. Surprise there. We also have JT, we have Victoria and Reed, who are trying to come to terms with JT's actions, and we have everything going on with Kyle and Lola and Summer, so stay tuned for this week's Restless Wrap.
You're tuned in to AFTERBUZZ TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, I'm Rachel Goodman here with another week of Restless Wrap. Thank you for tuning in on a Tuesday instead of our typical Sunday. Just quick announcement. I was actually in New York City over the weekend, long weekend here, seeing the final Anastasia on Broadway. It closed. Rest in peace, Anastasia. We do have the touring Anastasia that's actually coming to LA in the fall, but it was, I'm wearing my Anastasia shirt today in honor of the final Anastasia show on Broadway, which... it was amazing. If you have not seen it, I definitely recommend going out and seeing that show. But jumping right in here, we have had a lot of comments this last week in our Restless Wrap, our @RestlessWrap Facebook page. So thank you guys for going over and following that. As I say every week, I always post the link to the show there and any announcements. If we're gonna ever have like a schedule change, it is always on @Restless Wrap on Facebook. So you needn't look any further. I will always keep you updated there. But we actually had some conversation there this week. It was really fun. We had Todd Beaton messaging about old Phyllis coming back. Yeah, and that's one of the news pieces I wanted to mention is that this last week we had a couple of things happening. But Gina Tagnani, the woman who's playing Phyllis at the moment, she has been, she's leaving the show. The rumors that she was fired from Y&R and that Michelle Stafford is coming back. She's one of the people who played Phyllis in the past. And so she's coming back to reprise her role as Phyllis on The Young and the Restless. So there's that news right there. We have Jacob Marquez saying he's going to be here tonight. So thank you, Jacob, for showing up, even if you're not here yet. Shout out to you. Sam Suwon Pibone, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, was mentioning, we were talking about which Gina which Phyllis he prefers. And he said, I love both because they are beautiful, sweet, funny, and the best actress. But Gina does better in The Young and the Restless, and Michelle Stafford doesn't do a good job in General Hospital because her storyline was boring since her first day in GH. And then we had Todd Beaton mentioning that Adam's coming back. So that's the other piece of news I wanted to mention. Adam, we've been talking about this since I started hosting the Restless Wrap after show. Adam is coming back. He has been recast by Mark Grossman, who will now be playing him. One of the comments that when I was like looking this up and doing a little bit of research here, one of the comments out there is that Mark Grossman is actually a little bit younger than the other Adams of the past. So they, instead of aging him up, as has been in the past, the three actors before this Adam, they all, like, the first one I think was in his late 20s, then the second one was like early 30s, and then Justin Hartley was like 37 when he was cast in the role. So Mark Grossman is actually back to being, he's in his early 30s. So a lot of people were saying, yeah, they de-aged Adam. Well, maybe not. Maybe the way that they're going to play it is that he's going to be around the same age as the Adam we saw last, and that maybe Mark Grossman just happens to look a little bit older than Justin Hartley. But I'm really interested to see Adam come back. I was not watching Y&R when he was on the show. I think he had just been killed. So I really I'm curious. We had some mention about Chelsea too, and people wondering if she was going to come back. And she could. If we remember with Chelsea, the last thing we saw with her, she was driving away, and that was it. So she could very well come back, especially if Adam's here. That was, that's her love. So we will see. But I find it very interesting. They finally recast him. And Todd Beaton, just kind of going off of my Chelsea comment. Yeah, Chelsea's not coming back. So That's an interesting thing to note. We have a couple other comments from last week's show, and then we'll move into the content of this week. Alyssa Brown Carlton says, so glad JT finally showed up. I'm annoyed that it happened right before March Madness. Hubby Joe, next week is looking good so far. Can't wait to see what happens. See everyone then. And then Alyssa Brown Carlton also says, my plumber husband said that the whole pipe thing is nearly impossible. Hubby Joe, I'm not a plumber, but it did not make sense to me either. Yeah, that was something we were talking about last week was JT, a water pipe breaking and him somehow going through the ground to the river or whatever waterway is beneath Genoa City. Yeah, it didn't make sense to me at all. And then just going to our live chat, and then we'll get to our this week's information here. Kenneth Clark says, Adam is going to be younger. I will miss Justin. He did such a good job playing him. Yeah, from the clips that I've watched with Justin, he did a phenomenal job. But we also know that he ended up going on to This Is Us, where he has done his performances. Justin's just an amazing actor, and I'm not surprised to see that he's done such a good job, whether it's Y&R or This Is Us or anything that he's on. He just seems to capture the role in a very unique kind of way. Nikisha Jones, Adam supposedly is 16 years younger than Nick. Okay, well, that never came across to me, but I believe you definitely. But he looks close to Nick's age from what I can see. Okay, so let's dive in here because we do have a lot of content. We'll start with everything going on with JT because it surprisingly, so we picked right back up where we left last week, which is with Phyllis going to the cabin with Billy, not really with him, but kind of tagging along and following him, going to the cabin, and they end up, like, we didn't really know what was going to happen, but we knew that the women were passing out from the gas. I just want to note, last week, one of my comments was about how when JT accidentally hit the gas pipe, none of the women hopped up to like go toward the door, and that was my biggest complaint about that scene. Well, this week, congratulations, Sharon. She got up, like, so all the women were passing out. Not Sharon, not at first. She hopped up and she made an effort to get to that door by hopping, but then she fainted, so that didn't work. But at least she tried. So it ended up where the women, of course, ended up being okay. Ray showed up. They took JT into custody, but they didn't take him to jail. They took him to the hospital so he could heal. What we started to learn is that what happened, apparently, I don't know if I believe this yet, apparently JT had a benign tumor in his head, and that's what was causing him to act differently. I get it. I get that could be potentially a plausible excuse for his behavior, but I'm still thinking that JT's trying to play it off, and that he's trying to work the system and trying to work them again like he did in the beginning, because we knew when he came back, not this time, but the time before, we knew that JT was having issues. He was going to the hospital. We never figured out what was going on with the pills. They had flashed back to that moment in the car when he got electrocuted, and then they showed him going to the hospital. So we didn't really, before the abuse storyline, we didn't really know what was happening with him, but we knew that they were going to mention his health and that there was something going on we thought it was his heart and that he was going to get pills at the hospital for that reason. Now that we know that it's his head and that there was some kind of tumor there, they're trying to, at least GT and the doctors are trying to not necessarily excuse the behavior, but give a reason for the behavior as to the fact that he had this tumor in his head. And that kind of bothers me, is that we're getting this very like kind, apologetic JT. And yeah, like even Victoria used to say, well, I never knew him to be like this before. So there is a chance that it really was the tumor and it was causing all these behavioral issues, and it was causing him to be majorly like quick to anger, and not only that, but physically aggressive and abusive. It's very possible, but that's still, I kind of like the direction they're going with it, but I kind of don't, because all of this And the message that they were trying to send about this abuse storyline, and it just kind of, the message itself just didn't come across once they moved away from the problem and what was happening and the actual, like, just going through this emotionally and physically abusive relationship. And that will always bother me about this storyline, is that Y&R had the opportunity to really devote more time to a woman who is grieving after not just grieving, but processing the trauma of going through this relationship. And they, instead of working that angle and really focusing on, like, how do you get over that kind of abuse, instead of making that the message, they turned it into this murder situation. And then after nearly a year, JT's now back. We know it wasn't murder because he's alive. He's back, and it's kind of coming to a very unsettled close because they didn't tackle the issue. Then when they switched it to this, oh, well, we murdered a man and we feel guilty about it and someone's going to catch us. When they switched it to that, okay, so they dragged that out for about a year, and now we're back to nothing. Now we're back to, oh, he had a brain tumor, and that was what caused his behavior change, and that's why he was abusive. So it just, I feel like they started to do really well with the abuse storyline, but then they failed to really drive home the message of what you do in that situation, and they could have drawn that out and really showed the audience the struggle, because there's such a stigma when it comes to abusive relationships and why people, not just women, because men get into abusive relationships too. There's a stigma around it, and they really could have highlighted. They have an audience to highlight this to show so many people around the world what it's like to be in this relationship, and then what it's like to get out of it, and what it's like to process. And they didn't adequately handle that. And to go through this whole year, they spent a year dragging out this, how are they going to get caught? What are they going to do to get out of this? They spent a year dragging that on, and it was, in my opinion, not the most exciting. I know a lot of other fans saying the same thing. And so if they were going to drag anything out, it should have been what Victoria went through after JT was no longer in her life. So now, having said all that, I will say this. It's very interesting how they're handling it with JT in the hospital with Victoria and Reed. I'm getting the sense that Victoria does still care about JT, especially now that he's playing the storyline of, oh, well, my head, it was just the benign tumor causing me to do all these things. It could be true. I'm just very hesitant to believe that, because the thing is, she could end up getting back into this relationship with him, and then months down the road, he's going to do the same thing to her, and she won't be able to get out of it again. So I'm very at this point with JT, I want to believe that it was the brain tumor. I want to believe that that was the only thing causing him to act this way and treat someone like the way that he treated her. But it's hard for me to believe that when we know that JT does have an element of being a con man. And when I say that, what I mean is that he came back to Genoa City investigating Victor, and he did all these sneaky things, and so he can with his jobs, he can sneak into a room, or he can sneak into a building and remain unseen. And so he has a way of manipulating and conning people. And he came across very sweet to Victoria in the beginning of that, not this time, but the time that he came back to Genoa City. He came across like a very upstanding, kind person. And he had a way of acting that way to Kane, for example, and other people that he was talking to on his way out right before he started going crazy and ended up presumably dead. Right before that, he was still acting. So I am very hesitant to believe that we are going to see a JT who is a good guy again, because I feel like deep down he is just acting, and that he's gonna, as soon as he's pulled the rug over people, he's gonna start doing his old crap again. So we have some comments in the chat. We have Kenneth Clark. That apology seemed a little fake in the scene with Victoria. Nikisha, I agree, Kenneth. Nikisha also says the way they're going about the storyline is not making sense in the message. I don't know. Exactly. That's my problem with this, is that I get they didn't want to drag out anything for too long, but then why did they drag out this whole murder situation with JT for literally, it was close to a year. They should have, if they were going to drag anything out, it should have been what it's like to recover from abuse. And to me, that's a failure that they didn't do that instead. Hubby Joe, Jason Canella, who plays Arturo, was fired and is leaving the soap. And also Brooks Darnell, who plays Nate, is leaving also. Okay, thanks, Joe. Yeah, I think I had heard that too, but thanks for mentioning that. Kenneth Clark, I'm surprised that Amelia and Thad didn't get a Daytime Emmy nomination. Yeah, because if we go back to the abuse storyline itself, it was very powerful. The 1 week, like right after everything happened with Victoria and she kicked JT out and she was telling the women, it was very moving and very touching. I don't know if you guys remember, but Amelia, she ended up coming out like in between the show. She stepped out and did like a promotional, it wasn't even, I don't even want to call it an ad, but it was basically like a public service announcement. And in between, like as the storyline was happening, she stepped up and said, hey, like if you're going through an abusive relationship, you can get help. There's a number you can call. They should have done more with that. Like I loved those moments. They were wonderful. But yeah, they where they went was not where I would have gone with it if I had been the writer on the show. Nikisha Jones, could have been a really important message about domestic violence, but the writers didn't really think about what and how to go with it. Yeah, they could have done a million different things with it. There's so much drama that could have surrounded her recovery and the people around her. We saw this week too, the way that she reacted to Billy and told him to leave. There are moments that they could have had like that where Billy, or whoever, it didn't have to be Billy, any one of her friends, anyone in her life, her children, they could have shown how domestic abuse affects another person and how it affects the other people in their lives, not just the actual person. The way that they're kind of showing now with the way that Victoria snapped at Billy, but they should have done it they should have focused on that much sooner. Nikisha Jones, I feel, took the cliche soap, Thorpe having a tumor to justify his behavior. Yeah, and there's no justifying it. And now as the viewer, we're conflicted because is he lying? Is this how it's going to be, that he really didn't, like it wasn't really him, it was a guy with a tumor? No, JT still did that to her, and they're taking away from the fact that this happened by saying, oh yes, it was definitely a brain tumor. I am finding that very hard to believe, because even if you have I get that it's going to make people act differently. I'm not saying that it wouldn't, but that was pretty extreme. Like that's, abuse. And now they have JT saying, oh, well, I could see myself doing it, but at the same time, I didn't know it wasn't me. It was you. You're the one who did it. And it doesn't, like, either he had enough moments of being lucid, is what it sounds like to me, that he could have told Victoria what he was going through. He could have gone to a doctor. He could have said, my head has been hurting for a long time. He could have done so many things. So I think he needs to take more responsibility for that. And yes, he apologized. Yes, he said, I shouldn't have treated you that way. Yes, like those were wonderful things to hear from someone who's been abusive. But I wish that it would have been more coming from him and him taking more responsibility for it and not blaming it on a tumor. Nikisha Jones, I also believe that he never got over Colleen, JT. He loved her, and I believe he just can't deal with that as well. Yeah. And I was not watching when Colleen was on, but they have shown a lot of flashbacks, especially with JT coming back. And I get the same feeling. Not even as someone who didn't even watch when she was on, I get the same feeling that he was very much in love with her, and that she will always be his number one and the love of his life that he never got to be with. Kenneth Clark, I can't wait until Reed comes home and sees his father's alive. So that actually happened. That's one of the things, is that Reed came back this week. And it wasn't just that Victoria said sorry, or not sorry, scratch that. It wasn't just that JT said sorry to Victoria, but we also had a really emotional scene with Reed, which to me was much more like tender, I guess the word is, because obviously we don't have that abuse storyline between Reed and JT. He was always good to Reed. So it was more like seeing a son with his father, and Reed and JT seem like they're very similar people. So to get them in the same room again was very fascinating, and to see the dynamic and to see Reed go from anger to more of a place of understanding was pretty powerful. But at the end of this week, essentially what they end up doing is, as it was kind of, to me, this felt cliche. Reed and JT finally get to a good place, and literally as soon as this happens, the cops show up and say, "Oh yeah, JT, you're under arrest. You're gonna go to jail, and for the attempted murder of Victor," which is what they were trying to get him for before. And so they go and they arrest him, and it's basically stated that he's gonna go to the infirmary in jail now that he's well enough. So that's where they end that with him, and I expected it to go differently. It's very dragging this murder thing out for a year, and then this is what's happening. It's just very yeah, I don't know. I don't know where they're gonna go from here, and it almost feels like they're gonna put JT and Victoria back together again, or we need to see that JT is actually lying and that he really needs to be convicted because he's just trying to play the system again. Okay, so we're gonna I'll continue reading your comments too about the JT situation, but we've got a lot more to discuss, especially with Lola and Summer. Before I get into that though, I just want to mention, thank you guys for watching and being a part of AfterBuzz. It is amazing having your support. I love the fact that every week I come in and I have so many people in the chat, so many people helping. Like obviously I do the show by myself, so to have you guys here and always commenting and always being super supportive is incredible, and I can't thank you enough. I wanted to say too that you guys can, if you would like to, you can always subscribe to the AfterBuzz TV drama channel. We also have different channels for whatever shows you enjoy. We've got sci-fi, we've got reality TV, anything you could possibly enjoy with television. AfterBuzz is most likely covering it. So if you could definitely go ahead and support us by liking and subscribing to our different channels. And then definitely, we're on iTunes as well. So if you can give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, we would definitely appreciate it. And anything you do, I'll give you guys a shout out. So let me know that you did this, and I will be very happy to announce it on air that you're supporting us. And it's just, thank you again, because everything you guys do keeps us running, and you're the reason why we can keep doing this. And it means so much to me because I love having an outlet to discuss all of this, especially with other fans. So thank you guys again for allowing us to be the ESPN of TV talk. Speaking of talking, it's that time on the show where if you are listening live, it's Tuesday, April 2nd at about 7:43 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're listening live and you want to call in and be part of the show, the number to dial is 424-354-8302. Again, if you're listening live and you want to call in, the number is 424-354-8302. We have time to take a few callers if you guys would like to call in. Hubby Joe, they could have come up with a storyline of where Paul has been. Yeah, because that's another thing. Paul is back. Yeah, Paul is back. This is the only other thing to really mention with the JT situation. This is kind of an offshoot, but we had Sharon. She had a really sweet moment with Nick. I still want them to get back together. It isn't looking like that's going to happen right now. It looks like it's going to be Sharon and Ray. But it looks like Sharon and Ray are going in that direction. And Paul's back. He fired Ray. Sharon tried to stand up for him, and when that didn't work, she quit. So now she's back at the coffee shop. My husband and I were watching this together, and he predicted that maybe what's going to happen is they're going to end up hiring Ray to work for Newman somehow, and maybe like doing security or some kind of like investigations. Especially after the fact that he helped the family, Victor might be more likely to want him on his side. So that's a very interesting prediction that hubby Joe had, so I wanted to mention that because I also agree with that. So switching gears here, let's get into Lola and Arturo, Mia, Kyle. We had a couple of things. So with Lola woke up from the surgery. So did Summer. Everyone was healing. Summer had a little bit of a harder time. They played it up, not this week, but the week before. They played it up like she was might have a problem living. And when we got to it this week, it did not happen that way at all. She just had a little tiny bit of a slower healing process. We had a moment with Summer and Lola where Lola wheeled herself into the hospital room with Summer, and basically like gave her a talking to, like, oh, enjoy your husband. And it was just very kind of aggressive. But this week where we picked back up with them is that they were trying to, like, Lola was trying to be on her own and heal. And then we had Summer, who Kyle brought back to the Abbott house. And I think that we owe Jack another MVP award because Kyle started freaking out and telling Jack that he told Jack the full truth about Summer and the donor and saving Lola's life. And that Kyle started pouring his heart out to Jack about how he still loved Lola. And he was texting Lola and Kyle was doing exactly everything that Summer was worried about happening. And it looked like Kyle was going to jump ship and just go and find Lola. But what ended up happening was Jack went upstairs to talk to Summer. And he really, like, the thing with Jack is, I say this every week, I think it's been the last like 3 or 4 weeks I've specifically said this, that he seems very reasonable now, even if he hasn't always been. But he went upstairs, he talked to Summer, and basically got her side of the story because he wanted to see what she had been through. And he could tell that Summer was really head over heels in love with his son. So when Jack went back downstairs and Kyle was freaking out, saying, oh yeah, I think I'm still in love with Summer, or with Lola, I want to go be with her, I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Jack basically said, listen, there's a woman upstairs who sacrificed a lot to be with you, so don't just disregard her like she's trash. And, like, I get that Kyle has feelings for Lola still, and that this whole situation was really weird, and why would Summer even marry him, because she had to have known what was going to happen. But Kyle still made a promise to her, and he should at least honor the year. He told her he'd stay with her for the year, and that if he still didn't love her, he'd leave. So honor that year. Go back and, like, be with the person. Like, Kyle's the one who mentioned marriage in the first place. He should actually go through with his promise. But that's kind of what Jack was saying, was that, yeah, like, you made this commitment, honor it. Don't just leave her hanging. She sacrificed a lot for you, so at least don't just, throw her away. Actually give her a chance. And so I love the fact that he stood up for Summer, and that Jack was being very level-headed about it, as he's been recently. And I only say recently because I know there have been storylines in the very distant past where he's not always done the most reasonable thing, but the last couple years the last 2 or 3 years I've been watching, he has done generally very reasonable things. Kenneth Clark, Jordy, and Sharon have chemistry, but I love her and Josh always. Nikisha Jones, Jack told it like it is. Kenneth Clark, wasn't Summer his stepsister at one point when Jack and Phyllis were married? Yeah. And you want to know what's funny? When we had a scene later where Summer and Kyle were talking, and Summer offhandedly mentioned that her mother-in-law, that Kyle's mother-in-law was also his boss. And even though Summer and Kyle had just gotten married, my first thought was, oh, mother-in-law. Is she referring to the fact that Jack and Phyllis were once married, and that's why it's his mother-in-law? Or yeah, that's why. Well, I guess that would make more of like a stepmother situation. But it's just funny that that's where my head went first when Summer said mother-in-law, not the fact that Summer and Kyle had just gotten married, and that would legally make Phyllis Kyle's mother-in-law. Michelle D, I didn't feel bad for Summer because she knew he had feelings for Lola, but still went through with the marriage. Yeah, and that is true. And Hubby Joe says Summer is delusional. And yeah, she is. Like, don't get me wrong here. Summer is crazy to think that she could manipulate someone into being with her and having feelings with her by forcing them into this arrangement. Not that Summer was really the one to force it, since Kyle brought it up and suggested it. Even though he probably knew he kind of had to do that. But Summer did not say that. Summer just didn't know the way that she was playing it was that she didn't know if she wanted to do a surgery that would be risky. But it boggles my mind that that's what Kyle decided, that he decided, oh, I'm definitely going to make Summer my wife and go through with it this way. As Lola said, there were other options. There are always other options. And they could have figured this out together if Kyle had gone to Lola and they had discussed it. So, just as like a side note here, just to kind of, since we're getting a little short on time, really fast, we'll talk about Tessa. Tessa is now off the hook. Michael came in and basically said, yeah, hey, they were Crimson Lights, and Michael said that the charges that were going to be pressed against Tessa are now dropped. So that was good news for them, just to kind of update on that storyline. And then let's get into Arturo and Mia, and I am so sorry. I always butcher the rolling of the R's. That is not my strong suit in life, but I try. But Arturo and Mia, at the beginning of this week, we had Mia still blackmailing Arturo. Long story short, that blackmail situation only lasted for like an episode or two because Arturo actually went to Abby and told her the truth, which was good on him, but it also ended their relationship because Abby obviously can't get over that, especially the fact that Arturo told Abby that he loved her right after it happened, and it's just a man, like Abby said, a man who really loved her and really was committed to her would not have slept with Mia of all people, would not have slept with anyone. And Arturo, he tries a couple times to get back with her. At one point he brings roses to her office, and then he tries to apologize. But this isn't part of my law moment, but I want to say I started laughing because during Arturo's apology to Abby, he ended up basically saying, well, you've made mistakes too, right? We all make mistakes. And I wrote in my notes, loud groan. And because Arturo was like, you've made mistakes, nobody's perfect. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like that's going to win you someone back by like saying that you just like, because you can say, oh, well, nobody's perfect. You've made mistakes like me. Has Abby cheated on Arturo in this relationship? No, she has not. She was very committed to him. So bringing up her past mistakes, especially when he's the one who cheated on her, no bueno. Like, is it like not even like that shouldn't have been any point for him to bring up, especially when there was, no, it should not have happened that way. Abby listened to him before firing him and basically telling him that he'd never have a shot. We are seeing a new Abby though, and it's obviously this breakup has triggered something in her. I've seen her triggered before, especially with as we remember, she ended up sleeping with Scott. And not that he triggered her, but I just feel like she was already triggered because she remembered, she like with Scott, I remember her pointing out the fact that she didn't think that men could be faithful and that men tended to be cheaters. And Arturo was someone that she slowly let in. And yeah. So I don't see her being in a relationship for a while now after being burned this badly. It's funny because she took, just kind of mentioning this too, when she found out about Arturo, she took a hammer to his truck, and then she, I want to say at first the ring that she was wearing on her finger, I thought she smashed that too because she was laughing about like little pieces of, I guess it was windshield when she was back at the Abbott house with Jack. I thought that was her ring that she'd smashed up, but I think it was actually the windshield of the car. But yeah, she, like, Abby is on a rampage now. Like, she does not believe in love. She will not probably date for a long time, and everything going on with her right now, like, you can just see, like, she's so hurt that it's bringing her to laughter. That's the kind of place that she's in right now. Surprisingly though, Abby and Lola, they agree they're going to still work together. And specifically, Lola wants to dedicate her time to the restaurant. She ended up quitting Dark Horse, and now she's going to be a permanent, Abby's going to be a permanent, her permanent job is going to be working with this restaurant, working with Lola. And Abby kind of mentioned in passing to Lola that she wanted to, like, show what it was like to be a woman who was single, who didn't have to worry about a man being in her life. So she is definitely going down an interesting path there. A couple comments in the chat here. We have Amy Caroluzzo who joined. Hey, Amy. Kenneth Clark, Summer, your husband Austin is on Bold and Beautiful. Go to LA and get your boo. Laughing face, laughing face, laughing face. That is hilarious. Nikisha Jones, he was trying to justify his behavior. Matthew Kennedy, Mariah and Tessa are so boring now. And Matthew Kennedy, Abby is starting to be a real Newman. And then Michelle D says, and that's why Abby pulled a Carrie Underwood moment and bashed his car up. Yeah. She dug her keys into his car, huh? Not to quote the Carrie Underwood song, but yeah. And we've got a lot of people laughing at Michelle's comment, Nikisha and Matthew specifically. Okay, so let's just kind of mention Jabot really fast, and then we'll get to our law moment. The final thing is Jabot, they were, we knew that Carrie wasn't good. We knew that she was trying to plot Phyllis and Jack against each other. And we figured out this week what was going on. So Carrie, as it turns out, hired a faux intern who was really her. And the intern was registering all these different patents at a different company and basically screwing Jabot. And there was an emergency board meeting called, and Carrie showed up. And naturally, as we kind of all suspected, Ashley showed up too. And so that's where we ended this week, was that Ashley stepped in to basically be like, hi, I'm back. And guess what? It's me. I found a way. And it's very believable. We don't know. I think it was PC was the person calling Carrie, which could have just been Ashley. And she just had like a random name assigned to her. But yeah, now that we know Carrie and Ashley are working together, it makes so much sense. And it seems very legitimate, especially with the fact that Carrie, we know that she didn't ever really want to be with Jack. She makes that very clear in their final moment together, which is sad for him, but it's also kind of like, well, Jack, she's been lying to you. You caught her in so many different lies. What were you expecting at this point? But I still feel bad for Jack, because Carrie didn't have to mess with him in an emotional level too. I feel like that was it was probably a lot of Ashley's doing, but she didn't have to take it that far. She could have kept it where they were screwing the company and not Jack's emotions. Okay, so let's get to our law moment. I had a couple. So the first thing is that Tessa Raya, when they're together in Crimson Lights and Michael just randomly shows up, they stop him and they're like talking a mile a minute. And Michael's like, hi, I'm great. Thanks for asking. I thought that was pretty funny. Later on, when we have Billy finding the letter from Carrie, and this is before we really knew what was going on with her, but all we saw was Billy's face, and he literally just said, what the? And then we cut to black. I thought that was hilarious. And then the final thing I had to say was the moment when we had Kyle going over to Nick's house with Summer, and it was just a Nick and Kyle like private moment, and Nick offered Kyle a drink, And Kyle was like, nah, no thank you. And then Nick goes, if you're starting a life with my daughter, you're gonna need this. That, I think, was the funniest moment of the week. Let's get to our predictions before we end the show.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
I think that Kyle is going to get back with Lola. That's my first prediction. I think he's going to not commit to Summer the way he promised. I think that Carrie is going to pull one of those things with Jack where she tries to say, oh, well, it was real for me, when really it wasn't. And she's just trying to be nice about the fact that she, screwed with him. I think now that we know that we have, the actress for Phyllis being switched out, my prediction is the storyline itself is not going to change, that they're just going to randomly one day have Michelle Stafford show up and just fill in the blanks, and that would be that. But I do think that we're going to obviously see Ray and Sharon get together. I'd love to see Scott come back so that now that we have Abby in this really crappy position, I think it would bring a lot to the show if he came back to Genoa City and they kind of started up a romance again. Plus, it would bring more tension with Sharon, too, because seeing Scott, it would probably bring up all these emotions for her again. So I'd love to see that happen. And then my other prediction is that with this whole thing with JT, I don't think that I don't think that he really is genuine. I think that we're gonna find out that maybe he ends up getting out because he plays off like, oh, it was this tumor doing this to me. But I think the reality is gonna be that it wasn't, and that he knew how to con the system, and he's gonna get out and he's gonna do the same things all over again. And it's gonna be, once he gets out of jail, it's gonna be everything it's just gonna be there's gonna be another showdown with him, and maybe he'll end up just leaving the show. Okay, so let's check back in with the chat before we wrap up. Michelle D, I love Ashley being petty and spiteful. Nikisha Jones, go Ashley. Matthew Kennedy, yes, Ashley, you go, girl. Michelle D, until this big reveal, I found Carrie so boring. Kenneth Clark, Ashley came in walking like a boss, love Eileen. And then we have Kenneth Clark. Oh, two more comments. Michelle D, Summer may have a pregnancy scare if Kyle gets back with Lola. Yeah, I see that coming. Matthew Kennedy, no pregnant for Summer. Been there, done that storyline over and over. And then Kenneth Clark says, bring Sheila Carter back home. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in this week. Next week, we have a special guest on the show, so stay tuned for that. I will make the announcement on our on our Facebook page at Restless Rap. My name is Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Rach Goodman. Of course, as I've mentioned a couple times, our at Restless Rap Facebook page. If you like and follow, we're having conversations on there, especially recently with everything going on with Y&R. So definitely hop on over. You can leave a post. You can reply to any of my threads, and we can talk Y&R, and I will give you a shout out on the show. Until next week, or until actually next Sunday, not even a full week. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I am very excited to see what's going on this week in Y&R.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.